Welcome back to the On Air with Jamie podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Superconscious Shift Sessions. I have to say, this is a topic I never thought I would be speaking to in this space because truthfully, I'm not an expert. I am not going to be changing my Instagram bio to period whisperer and starting to create courses, masterclasses, or anything of the like around periods or anything like that. But I did think it was a really important conversation to bring to light. And the reason that I think it's so important is number one, I think there are so many women struggling with health issues and things in their body that they actually don't need to be struggling with. And the reality is that these things absolutely affect their business because they affect the way that they're able to show up and their energy levels and all of the things. But also, number two is that the what I'm going to share with you in this episode is a direct result of the work that I do. And it is a direct result of clearing trauma and clearing limiting beliefs and clearing conditioning and clearing shit from my body. But it's not something that people talk about. And it's certainly not a reason that most women invest in themselves or invest in this work. Most women, when they're investing in themselves, and I think this is actually a topic that I really want to speak to in more depth in another episode, but most women are investing in themselves right now in order to see return on investment in their business. It's like nothing is worth it. Nothing is worth putting money into unless they can see that it's going to give a real tangible result through their business and usually through increasing their income. Now, I have a lot of issues with this because my whole take on business is that when we focus on you as the founder and as the brains and the powerhouse behind your business, without even worrying about the direct effect that it's going to have on your business, it's going to have an effect on your business, right? When you are clear and level headed and able to tap into your intuition and feel good about yourself and feel good about the work you do and all the things, right? Of course, that's going to directly affect your business because, of course, you're going to show up in a different energy. Of course, you're then going to be more magnetic online and all the things. But for some reason, women really only want to seemingly invest in themselves when they can see that direct correlation between the investment and their bottom line, basically. And what I want to use this episode to do is really share with you another way that investing in yourself and doing the inner work right can actually manifest in your life. And it's in ways that you wouldn't actually expect. So, the backstory behind this podcast is that on my Instagram stories a few days ago, I shared the story about how over the past 4 to 6 months, I have been really deep in my own work. I have been behind the scenes, massively making sure that I am walking my talk. That means I'm doing the recodes, I'm doing the EFT, I'm doing the shifting, I'm releasing the things from my body. I'm literally putting myself through the same processes that I put my clients through, that I guide my clients through, right? And it's all future focused. None of the intention behind any of the things that I'm doing is about going back and healing past trauma or even, periods or health or anything like that in general. Like none of that, right? It's all about where do I want to be? What do I want my life to look like? What do I want my business to look like? How do I want all of that to feel? And then reprogramming all of the things that are in the way, all of the things that come up when I dive into that, when I dive into what action I need to take and all the things to bring that into my reality. That is how all of my work works, right? It's all future focused. We don't go looking for problems. Okay. And so I've really been putting myself through the trenches of this. I've been through some of the biggest transformations of my whole entire life just this year. And I do think it's a testament to the work that I've been doing. But something that I've noticed is that for the past 3 to 4 months, I have had absolutely no period pain. My cycle has regulated. the pain is just not there, apart from, a little bit of niggle here and there, right? And the heaviness is so much less than it used to be. So I want to give you a backstory so that you can really understand why this is even important. I first got my periods when I was 12 years old, which I recognize for a lot of people nowadays. Like, we're seeing girls as young as 8 getting their periods, which I just think is insane. But for me, at 12 years old, it was so young. I had absolutely no idea about that stuff. I hadn't had the conversations with my parents, none of that. It came as an absolute shock. Like, it's almost giving, if you've seen the movie Carrie, it's a Stephen King movie, and she gets her period in the shower of like a girl's locker room, and blood goes everywhere, and she fucking freaks out because she has no idea, because her mum never spoke to her about that stuff. And then what's worse is she gets bullied for it. And when I was thinking about this earlier, I'm like, it's actually just so like congruive to what my schooling life was like. Not because I was bullied at all, but because when you're 12 and people don't really understand periods, it's like it's not the cool thing to have, right? And so when I was going through school and when I first got my period, it was not cool. And the girls that had their period got teased. And so I learned to not share. And it was like this weird fucking conversation, right? Where people would talk about it and they'd be asking like, oh, who's got their period? But if you were honest and you said, yes, me, you got teased for it. And it was like this big fucking weird thing. And when I think about it in hindsight and knowing what I know now about our beliefs and our conditioning and all of that, that in itself is a really traumatic event. To have your period early, to not understand it, to not be prepared for it, and then also to have to lie about it and hide it because it was shameful and embarrassing. That's a lot of fucking shit to hold at 12 years old, right? A lot of fucking shit to hold at 12 years old. And I wonder how many other people had a similar experience to me. Because if you did, firstly, please reach out to me on Instagram. I'd love to talk about this further. But to think about, like, we always talk about what happens between the ages of 0 and 7 and how much that shapes who we become and our limiting beliefs and our conditioning and all the shit, right? But what about what happens after that? What about, these periods, pun not intended, but these times where we're that bit older and we go through something that's traumatic, but we don't recognize at the time that it's traumatic. We just have to lie about it and hide about it and make jokes about it, right? That's fucking trauma that gets stored in your body. Your body remembers these things, right? And so I was 12 years old. I got my period, had to lie about, didn't have to, but I chose to lie about it to fit in with people, right? Pretty standard 12-year-old stuff. But the biggest thing for me was that they were heavy and they were painful. And I always had this fear of leaking through pads. I couldn't even use a tampon because I was fucking 12. But I always had this fear of leaking through. And so many times it happened. So many times through the night, I would like leak all through my bed and have to like change my sheets and wash them and like go through all that stuff. And it was so like, it's a lot at such a young age. Okay. But the pain was something else. And I was always told it's normal. Like, it's totally normal. Like, normal to feel the pain. That's just periods. Like, welcome to being a woman. And we all laugh and joke about it, right? As women, we all laugh and joke about how, we drew the short straw and we have to have periods and we have to have pain and we do all the things. And like, I'm actually really done with those conversations because I think that they just reinforce cycles of trauma that are just not necessary. But that also is a topic for another day. But I dealt with this until I was either 14 or 15. I can't remember specifically. And then I got put on birth control. So, like the combined oral contraceptive pill to control my hormones, to help with my skin, which was breaking out. I had cystic acne, like so red and painful and inflamed, right? If that's not a sign that your body's in stress, then I don't know what is. But we know that our healthcare is not prepared for these things with looking at root causes. And I'll talk about that soon. But I was put on the pill to help control my hormones, and it was supposed to help reduce the bleeding and reduce the pain and all of that. It literally did nothing apart from help clear my skin up a little bit. And so I just lived life like this. I thought it was normal that once a month, or my periods were actually longer than that. So I had cycles that were 35 days, which is very indicative of PCOS, but that also was not really like known about when I was 15. And so I just dealt with it. And I remember going home from school sometimes because I was vomiting, I was in so much pain, I had headaches, like all the things. And this actually occurred through my entire life. I was told by a doctor once to just skip my period because I was on the pill, that as long as I gave my cycle a run through every 3 months. And I'm shaking my head at this because when I think about it, this is such terrible medical advice, but you don't know what you don't know, right? And so I was always told, if it's that painful, like just skip your periods, it'll reduce the bleeding. You have iron deficiency anyway, so it's not going to hurt to do this as long as you give yourself a clean out. Yep, a clean out every 3 months, everything will be okay. And so this is what I did. And my husband has actually pointed this out to me. It's like, I always know when you're going to get your period, because for like the week or up to 3 days before, you're a mess. Like you're an absolute emotional roller coaster, picking fights. The world is crashing down around you. Everything is shit. And I'm like, oh, I know what's happening. Jamie's getting her period. It's happening. In a few days, she'll settle down. It'll be all good, right? Honestly, bless my husband, I swear. But that has been my life from the time I was 12 years old, and I'm now 33. That's fucking 21 years of horrible cycles, of pain, of discomfort, of an emotional roller coaster. Like, if that in itself doesn't cause trauma, then I don't know what does. But what I have noticed since beginning to put myself through these reprogramming sessions and really going deep with them and really allowing the release from my body, I have not had a painful cycle. I have officially gone 4 months now with no pain, apart from a little, twig here and there. Nothing at all like that's an issue. Like, of course, when you have periods, it's normal to be tired and a bit more fatigued than normal. And it's normal to have some little twings, your uterus is literally shredding. Like, there's like, layers and layers of cells coming away from your body. It's normal to feel something in that, but it should not be debilitatingly painful. And that's how I've lived my life, right? No, I don't have endometriosis. I was diagnosed with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, in I think 2018 or 2019. And that's like another whole story in itself, but they kind of just pulled all of the stories together. Like, that's why you've got painful periods, that's why you've got longer cycles, that's why you bleed so heavy, all of the things, right? But all of that has come under control since I started doing this reprogramming and release work at an even deeper level. 4 months after 21 years of painful periods, I honestly started to think that maybe it was just a coincidence. And so I decided to do a deep dive into this and be like, is this just a coincidence? Is there actual merit behind this? That doing this work is actually releasing something from my body, and now that's why I'm not experiencing painful periods? Or is it just a total coincidence? Like, is it just a total, there's no link, this is made up, and it's just a happy accident, right? But what I have found, because you know me, I love to research this stuff, I love to dive deep, I love to bring all of the information to you, is that there is a lot of emerging evidence now that does suggest that people who live in a chronic state of stress, in fight or flight, and who have experienced trauma throughout their life actually do have more painful periods. And there's actually a lot that goes into it. I wanted to bring you like a really clear-cut explanation, but the more that I look into it, the more that I see, and I'm like, truthfully, I'm not really surprised by this, knowing how the body works and how complex everything is. But there's not a clear-cut, simple explanation for why this is linked, or why women find that when they actually work on their limiting beliefs and their conditioning and their ancestral and generational trauma and all of the things, right, why they then find actual changes in their body. It is a very complex web of things. But there is a few areas that I really want to touch on for you to just help to explain it further. So the first one is that so many of us live in a constant state of fight or flight. This means that our body is always stressed, right? And I think there's a lot of women who live in this who actually don't even feel physically stressed anymore because they've gotten so used to living in this way, right? And this was definitely me for so many years, especially in my career as a pharmacist, which, by the way, hello, if you're new here, welcome. I'm a pharmacist. I'm also a certified health coach. I've studied integrative nutrition. I've also studied some functional medicine. And so my obsession with all of this root cause stuff came from all of that. It came from being in this industry and starting to recognize that, hang on a minute, there is so much happening in the world in the area of health and disease and all of these things that people are coming in every single day into the pharmacy to get medication to treat, right? That nobody's really asking why. Nobody's really asking why. Well, I mean, truthfully, lots of people are asking why, but nobody's really loud enough about it. But in our mainstream healthcare, there is no question as to why is this happening. You know, when I first started diving into this myself with my own health at, I think I was 26 when I decided I fucking had enough of this. Something is not right. You know, I had a lot of health things apart from the period stuff. I also had a lot of gut issues and pain and just pure discomfort. And I had days where I'd be at work and just doubled over in pain. And nobody could tell me what was wrong. And when I went to the doctor, they literally were like, oh, you know, if you want to lose weight, you just need to exercise more. If you want to do this, you just need to do this. There was never a holistic approach or a holistic look at everything. And so I dove into this world of I guess it's like holistic health, you would call it, because I was done playing into that narrative. I was done seeing people come in all the time into the pharmacy, getting medication for things that I knew could be dealt with in a different way. And so I dove into this world. And the more I dove, the more I understood that stress played a huge role, that the foods that we eat played a huge role. And then finally, it was like the missing piece when I started diving into the mindset work, because that's what really taught me that it's not just the food and it's not just the stress. It's more than that. It's what else is going on in the body, what else is going on in the mind. What have we been conditioned to believe? What traumas have our family experienced? Like, there's so much to this. And there's so much to the physical manifestation of dis-ease in the body. But stress is a huge player. And so what happens is we live our lives in this permanent state of stress. And we have a hormone called cortisol, which is known as the stress hormone. And believe it or not, it has a functional role in our body, right? It's what helps us get out of danger when we need to get out of danger. Cortisol, adrenaline, all the things, right? You know, when people talk about that adrenaline rush, it comes because our body needs that. Our body needs that surge of energy. It's needed in our body. We need to feel stress so that we know how to keep ourselves safe, so that we have the energy when we need it to depart a situation that's going to cause us danger. But the problem is when we live in a life that everything feels like fucking danger and we live in this permanent state or fight or flight, it completely puts off the hormone cortisol. And so that's when you start to notice that you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't go to sleep. It's because your cortisol's through the roof, but it should be through the roof in the morning when you're waking up. But then when you finally get to sleep, you wake up feeling so tired because your cortisol slumped back down. There are so many people living with cortisol imbalance. It's absolutely insane. And I know for a fact that mainstream health do not acknowledge this to be a thing, right? They don't acknowledge this. In university, yeah, we learn about the role of all of these hormones and chemicals and things in our body. We learn about all the different axes and how the things balance themselves, how the hormones balance themselves, the delicate need for everything to be at certain levels in order for our bodies to function optimally. But what we don't learn about is how to recognize when that balance is off and then what to do about it outside of mainstream medication. And this is what happens, right? And so this link between painful periods and stress and trauma is so complex that nobody can really put their finger on exactly what it is. But this fight or flight response is a big part to it. And the issue is when you live in a permanent state of stress, your body is inflamed. It becomes so inflamed, your gut gets out of whack. And when I say inflamed, I mean like we have actual inflammatory markers, chemicals in our body that send signals all over the place, right? I don't necessarily mean like, although it's interesting, when I say inflamed, I don't mean like swollen. But what's really interesting is that one of the symptoms of having cortisol out of whack and through the roof is actually being puffy and holding water weight and things like that. But when our body's inflamed, everything goes out of whack because it all relies this really delicate balance in order to function optimally. Now, the inflammation itself, as well as the cortisol being out of balance, then has the downstream effect of putting our sex hormones out of balance. And so we start to see these like estrogen dominant symptoms, or progesterone is too low. And it's because as soon as one hormone gets out of whack, the body tries to overcompensate and reduce other hormones because they all work so complexly together. Okay. And so it puts everything then out of whack. I'm interrupting this episode really quickly to talk to you about my brand new one-on-one offer, Superconscious Shift Sessions. These are one-on-one intensive subconscious reprogramming and trauma release sessions. Honestly, I see things so overcomplicated in this online industry, and I really wanted to create something that was so stripped back and so specific and fucking simple for you to move through the blocks and the things that are keeping you stuck. If you are feeling resistance, if you know all of the things that you need to be doing, but you're not doing it, something is in the way. And it's most likely not because you're out of alignment, it's because there is a part of you that doesn't want you to take the action that you know you need to take. We can literally reprogram this and release what is stopping you from your body in a simple 60-minute session with me. If this interests you, please reach out via DM on Instagram to talk about packages, or click the link in the show notes below to book your one-on-one session right now. Spaces are limited, of course, because this is one-on-one work directly with me held over Zoom, but I promise you the transformation that you will experience from these sessions is like no other. This work is so important to me, and it's really important for me to get this work out there, to invite you into my world, and to give you a taste of what it's like to experience life without limitations. I think something we don't realize is actually how much our underlying beliefs and conditioning actually contribute to the stress that we experience in our everyday life. For me, the reason that I was living my life in a constant state of fight or flight was because of the beliefs that I had about myself, about my work, about the world around me, and that then affected the way that I lived my life. If you remember, if you've listened to any of my episodes before, I talk all the time about the belief cycle. And it's because I just think that it really gives such a beautiful explanation to how our beliefs really do shape our reality. And so a refresh on that is that we have these underlying and most often dormant beliefs. And when I say dormant, it's because we usually don't even remember that we have these things stored there, because our subconscious is our autopilot. It stores all of our beliefs and our thoughts and our memories, right? And it brings things up at relevant times. But most of what we experience in the day-to-day life is built on these dormant memories and dormant beliefs that we don't even know are shaping our reality. And so what happens is we have these beliefs and we'll come up against something that will trigger this belief to come up. And again, we don't always get like the root cause belief that comes up. It's something that's more downstream. And so that belief, that thought comes up and it elicits an emotion. And obviously, when we're talking about this, it's usually something that's like stress or fear, or we're a bit scared or we're anxious, right? And that then determines the action that we take and therefore the results that we get in our life. And so what happens is, an example, like I'll give you a really specific example. So for me, an underlying belief that I had was that you had to work really hard to earn money. And so I would have these times in my career where I really wanted to progress, and I wanted to grow and evolve and have new opportunities and earn more money and all the things, right? And so I'd be faced with something, like something would come up, I'd get a phone call from work, or I'd be on a day off or whatever. And it would trigger this belief that I have to be working hard to have money, right? I had to work really hard in order to progress in my career. And so then I'd feel anxious because I was sitting around doing nothing, and I'd be questioning, like thinking about all the things that I had to do in my job and managing the pharmacy and all the stuff, right? And that would then be like, oh shit, okay, well now I feel really stressed and anxious. I'm going to go into work and I'm just going to quickly do those things out of uniform because then I can tackle it off and rah, rah, rah. Now, here's the thing, that those beliefs did shape my reality, and they shaped a reality of workaholism and, literally being addicted to my job. But also, I achieved everything that I wanted to achieve in my career. And so that then reinforced this cycle of, oh my gosh, like you were just rewarded so much for working so hard and for all that stress that you put yourself under. And it didn't feel safe at the time, but now it's like, this is it. Like, this is it. We've reinforced it, right? And so that cycle kept getting reinforced into my brain and into my body, because every time it would be the same cycle of events. A belief would come up, I'd feel really stressed, I'd go and do all the things and stress myself out even more. And then I'd feel so good when it got done, and then I'd be rewarded for it. And then boom, the cycle would continue. Okay. And so we don't even think about the effect that these beliefs then actually have on our body. And so nobody ever thinks to dive into what beliefs you're holding, what beliefs that you have, or what beliefs your family had around anything in life, and how it's actually affecting your body, how it's affecting the hormones, how it's affecting all of the things. Not to mention the fact that we also have these traumas stored in our body. Our body remembers things that our mind does not. If you have experienced anything in your life that elicited like a full body response, like, when you get that phone call and you weren't expecting it and it's bad news and you can feel your stomach drop, right? That actual body response. Your body will remember that. And so much of the personal development world, so much of this mindset work doesn't actually address what is stored in our body. Our body is holding on to energy and beliefs and limitation and traumas. And when we just work from a mind level, sure, we can get ourselves to the place where we don't think that we're stressed or anxious anymore, but our body still feels it. And for me, this was like the missing piece. I have done so much mindset work, so much mindset work. And this is the stage that I got to, where I wasn't thinking the limiting beliefs or thinking the bullshit or thinking I was stressed anymore. I was really able to control my mind, but my body was still in pain. My body was still anxious and stressed and overwhelmed and puffy and literally getting period pain all the time. You need to also be able to release these things from your body. And we do this through a recode. And so when I've been doing the recodes over the last few months, a lot of what I've been focusing on is not just the beliefs, but also noticing, where in my body am I feeling this? How does it feel? How can I release that energy? How can I release those emotions, or this like stagnancy, this trauma, this shit that I can feel weighing my body down? And through doing this, I haven't run a hormone profile because that's like a lot of effort and a lot of doctors don't do things like that. But through doing this, I believe that I have been resetting my hormonal balance, and therefore I've been able to reduce the inflammation in my body. I'm not feeling stressed on a mind or body level anywhere near what I used to. It's reducing the inflammation. My skin is like the best that it's ever been in my whole entire life. And I don't have this pain, right? There's one final little piece, and it's the energetic piece that I really want to touch on as well. And I came across this theory actually on TikTok a little while ago. And when I listened to it, I was like, there is absolutely no scientific evidence to back this shit up. but it actually just makes sense. And that is that a lot of women who have issues like PCOS, particularly, that are more often than not characterized by increased levels of testosterone. There is the theory that from a spiritual standpoint, it means that they've had to be in their masculine for so much of their life. They've had to be predominantly in their masculine energy, in their control energy, in their take charge energy for so much of their life that it's actually having a physical effect on their body and it's putting their hormones out of whack. I actually got goosebumps as I was saying that, because when I read this, when I heard this, I was like, this just makes so much sense. Because for me, I have spent almost my whole life in what I would consider the masculine energy, in the doing, in the controlling, in the need to make sure that I was safe, right? I did grow up in a little bit of a tumultuous family environment. And I probably should speak to that in another episode. I absolutely did not have the levels of trauma that other people did, right? I absolutely did not. But I definitely did experience a very different childhood experience to a lot of other people. Like, I would not say that I grew up in the standard happy, healthy home, right? And so part of the response of that for me is this need to control and this need to make sure that I'm safe and this need to like preempt what other people are doing and other people's thoughts, feelings, and emotions to try and protect myself, but also like people please and like diminish their angst and their anxiety and all the things, right? And so for me, I do believe that my hormone imbalances stem back as far as that, from needing to be in the masculine all the time. And through the work that I've been doing, I have been making sure that I'm releasing that stuff. I'm bringing my protector controller in. I'm healing the inner child. I'm letting her know that she's safe now, that the things that she went through weren't normal and that it's okay. But what we need now is to come together. And this is, I'm talking about coming together because we're back to part personalities, right? I have to record a whole episode on this so that you know what the fuck I'm talking about when I start talking about part personalities, because they actually play such a huge role in everything. But there are two part personalities I really want you to know about. One is the protector controller. It's this masculine core of us, I would say, that its core purpose is to protect you and to control the narrative as best as it can. It's very rooted in masculine energy. But then you also have this inner child that is so often wounded and carrying trauma as well. And so for me, they've both been a little bit out of whack. And because of that, I believe that from an energetic point of view, I've had to be in my masculine for so long. Now, this, I don't believe, is as simple as just releasing the work and like releasing the trauma, and like doing the reprogramming work, because I do believe there's actually a level of consciousness that has to come to being in masculine, feminine, and knowing how to interchange between the two. We need both. I'm not saying like, oh, you're masculine core and that's why you've got hormone out of balance and all the things, right? But I do think women are meant to be mainly in their feminine, but supported by their masculine. And when that balance gets off, when you always need to be in your masculine, you always need to be controlling and organizing and doing, then absolutely it throws off the balance. And so from a conscious point of view, I have very consciously been leaning more into my feminine and allowing myself to be supported by the masculine energy in my life, like physically in my life, but also in myself. I've created the systems and the structures and the things around my business that allow me to stay in my feminine rather than always having to rely on that masculine. And I'm really leaning back, particularly in my relationship, to allow my husband, who is so used to me controlling and doing all the things because that's what I thought I had to do, really take charge. And in doing that, that has been so helpful for me. And it's been so helpful for our relationship as well, which, that probably should be another whole episode on its own, but I don't want to go too much more into that now. But I'm like sitting here just reflecting on all of the stuff that I've just shared with you, and also recognizing that it really is a lot. It really is a lot to understand the complex interplay of hormones, of energy, of stress, of trauma, of all the fucking things that we experience in our life, and then throw in there in that mix the part personalities, the inner child, the protector controller, all of the things, right? And you're probably sitting there being like, holy fuck, like I don't even know where to go with this. And truthfully, I don't want you to go anywhere. I want you to just let this land. And I want you to just like see and choose to see that given half the chance, our bodies are actually designed to heal themselves. And this is something I learned in my health coaching certification. And it was always put to us that the problem was that most people just were not giving their body the chance to actually heal itself. But when we talk about allowing the body to heal itself, it's not just about the exercise. It's not just about the food we're eating, the fucking supplements we're taking, and all of that stuff. The final piece to the puzzle that most people miss is addressing what is stored in the body. It's addressing the energetic side. It's addressing the traumas. It's addressing the conditioning, the limiting beliefs, the self-sabotage cycles, the generational trauma, the past life woundings. We are such complex beings. And we want to simplify the fuck out of everything and be like, well, this was supposed to just be the thing that fixed everything for me. And then when it doesn't, when you go and exercise and nothing changes, or when you shift your diet and nothing changes, you don't look anymore. You just say that it's all bullshit. But you have to address all the things. And I think for so many people, if we actually just looked at what was going on underneath the surface in their mind and in their body, not one or the other, both together, we could release so much more. Now, the reason that periods are even relevant to you as a business owner is because of the effect that this has on your life. Like for me, up until this last few months, every month I would go through this cycle of feeling so fucking emotional. And I couldn't show up on my social media when I felt that way because I struggled. Like I thought the whole world was crashing down around me. And it was always in that week before my period that I'd be like, my business is failing and it's never going to work. And I just cannot do the thing and everything is shit. And I made it all mean so much about me, right? I don't go into that spiral anymore because I've released this shit. And then what about for the women who were like me, who do experience really painful periods? What the fuck do you do in your business then? Okay, cool. Yeah, you can absolutely lean into the world of cycle syncing. And I really admire women who do basically shut their business down for the week where they have their period and they go into their womb cave, right? But for so many people, that's not feasible. If you're still in a job, that's not feasible. You can't take a week off every month because you've got your period. It's not a thing. Life still needs to go on, right? And while I do think there is merit to cycle syncing, and while absolutely I do take it easier on myself through that week of my period, I am not debilitated anymore. I'm able to just show up the same way I always would. I just don't plan as much through that week because I'm a bit more tired than normal. And I'm sharing all of this because this is what's available to you as well. But also, I want you to start looking at the other things that shift and change in your life and in your body when you do this work, rather than always looking for the monetary gain. Because me not being on emotional roller coaster for the week before my period every month and then in debilitating pain for the first 3 days of my period, it's helped me so much, but it's also really supported my relationship. Not that my husband would ever complain to my face about this, but it has stopped those unnecessary arguments and bullshit that used to happen in that week before my period because it doesn't happen anymore. And so I really want you to start to think about what else is going on in my world? How else is the work that I'm doing manifesting in my reality outside of the money? Because the money will come. The money will always come. You will always see at some stage the return on the investment in a financial way. But it's not always about that. You didn't just build a business to make money, you built a business to sustain a certain life that you want to live. The money will come. The money is part of the process, but it's not the end result. I really hope that you have enjoyed this slightly left field, left wing, whatever, episode that kind of came out of nowhere. But like I said, I really wanted to bring it to the table. I wanted to bring a different conversation, to share some other ways that this work actually helps as a female entrepreneur, as the brains and the powerhouse behind your business. Because in my world, I truly do believe that when you grow and evolve and get to shift through this stuff, your business will grow and evolve and shift as a byproduct. But here we just focus on you. And how nice is it to just have something in your life that's just for you, right? That's just you getting to step into your most authentic self and removing the layers of shit that has been holding you back, right? And that's where my area of expertise really lies. This is why I have brought out Superconscious Shift Sessions, so that we can really dive into this stuff in a one-on-one area, but without the need to sign up to months and months and months of private coaching. I think there's a lot of people who offer, like every second person offers private coaching in private containers for long periods of time. But the beautiful thing about the work that I do is we don't necessarily need really long periods of time to experience really substantial shifts in our life. That is why I'm so obsessed with the Superconscious Recode, because things move so fast. And the reality is that if you really want a business that is fast and collapses time, if you want to be one of those people who does in 1 month what most people take 6 months to do, you have to be able to shift through the shit that is coming up for you at a fast pace. And this is the way that I do it. So the link, if you want to book a Superconscious Shift session with me, is in the show notes. I'm not necessarily saying that one session will be enough to fully elicit all the changes that you want. Like, we do have to be really realistic with what we can tackle in a 60-minute session. But what I can guarantee is that each session will give you permanent change that you will experience right there on the call. I can absolutely do up packages if you want to purchase a package and have multiple sessions. Keep them up your sleeve, whatever you want to do. In the very least, book a session and just experience it for yourself, because I promise you this work is like nothing else in the personal development industry that I've ever experienced. If you love this episode, if you love all my episodes, I would absolutely love it if you shared this with a friend and also gave us a review on whatever platform you are listening to the episode. It honestly helps me get this into more women's ears. I truly want to make a difference. I really believe that I am here to change the way women particularly do personal development, and I want to give you tangible results. I want to give you a new way of looking at things, and I want to show you that this deep inner work actually gets to be fun, light, and fast.